Welcome to the United States Marshal Service Medical Pre-Planning and Support course. This course is designed to familiarize the task force officer with the requirements and roles expected of a task force officer working within a U.S. Marshal Service task force team. Terminal performance objective. Given an enforcement action, the task force officer will be familiar with the pre-planning process and support roles of a task force officer should an incident occur. EPO number 1. Identify the principles of medical operational planning. EPO number 2. Identify common patient extrications. EPO number 3. Identify post-incident considerations. Identify the principles of medical operational planning. The USM 45 enforcement action briefing should be completed on all enforcement actions. This form comes in various formats and can be completed using a paper hard copy, digital PDF, or mobile device. The USM 45M is the mobile device version and can be saved to your phone and sent to team members through text messages or apps. The USM 45 takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes to complete and is only 2 pages long. It includes information about the subject, charges, safety considerations, medical resources, logistics, target location, vehicle information, team member assignments, and after-action briefing details. Once the enforcement action is completed, a hard copy should be kept in the hard file and or uploaded into JDIS. The emergency medical resources section is highlighted in red, making the information easier to locate while under stress. Along with the rest of the USM 45, the medical resources section should be briefed to all members of the team so that everyone is familiar with the plan. In the first block, it's essential to list the nearest trauma center with their address and phone number. This may not be the closest medical facility, but this is the best medical facility available. The phone number listed should be a direct line into the emergency room, often a dedicated phone carried by the nurse in charge of emergency room operations. This number can be obtained by calling the facility before the operation, explaining that you work for the U.S. Marshals, and ask for the direct number to the charge nurses station. In the second block, the nearest hospital is listed with their phone number. This may be your only option if a hospital with a higher level of care is not available within a short distance. Next, you will list who is the primary medic and if any local medical assets are on standby and available, such as the local fire department or a local ambulance provider. It's important to identify the rally point and where the keys will be kept should an emergency arise. The bottom 2 blocks show the name and contact information for the closest air medical evacuation units and the closest animal hospital. It's important to consider what hospital is best for our patient should we need to medically evacuate them. Hospitals are broken down into 5 levels based on their trauma designations. The appropriate trauma level is important when it involves traumatic injury, such as a gunshot wound. What about a gunshot wound to the arm versus a gunshot wound to the face? What surgical interventions are required to prevent death, loss of eyesight, or loss of limb? It is essential to consider the injuries when deciding where to evacuate a patient to. In general, the only difference between a level 1 and level 2 trauma center is that a level 1 facility has an educational programs component, a research component, and the medical outreach program attached. Level 2 may not have all of these attached to their medical center, but either level provides the best opportunity for surgical intervention. Both level 1 and level 2 hospitals are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and always have highly trained specialists and staff and equipment available. If possible, self-transport to a level 1 or level 2 facility should be the primary medical plan. Level 3 hospitals have an ER and are usually open 24 hours. However, they do not have a full complement of specialists available like level 1 or level 2 hospitals. Most level 3 hospitals will stabilize a patient and move them to a higher level of care, either a level 1 or level 2, for advanced surgical intervention. Level 4 and level 5 hospitals may simply be an acute care or appointment style medical clinic and should be avoided unless there is no other option. In general, level 3 and lower level medical centers will attempt to stabilize before they transport to a level 1 or level 2. They are taking precious time that could otherwise be spent transporting someone to the specialist at a level 1 or level 2 to stop the internal bleed via surgical intervention. The goal should be to transport to a level 1 or level 2, and other facilities should only be considered if the transportation time is severely prolonged and there are no medical personnel with you. Now that you know which hospital is the best to evacuate to, knowing your hospital's layout is the next important step in medical planning. If you Google an address to the hospital, there's a good chance that address will direct you to the front lobby and not the emergency room. It's important to know how to get to the ER. Is it on the road behind the hospital? Is the ambulance bay entrance at the same location? If you need an air evacuation to a trauma center, where is the helipad located? These are all important factors to consider after the primary hospital has been identified. Pre-operational planning should allow you to identify what EMS resources are available within your area of operation. Does your fire department transport medical patients, or is it through an ambulance EMS provider? Fire departments and ambulance providers are eager to help. If the threat level is deemed higher than normal, consider putting local EMS on standby. If you put them on standby, where is their staging area location? It should be close to the scene, but far enough away to mitigate any potential risk. Consider choosing a local fire department, baseball field, church, or open space as a staging area. If you consider putting air medical assets on standby, some air medical assets will launch and be on standby in the area or land at a predetermined location near the scene. Ask your local medical evac provider for training so you can become familiar with their capabilities and expectations. In general, medical air evac units will want at least 100-foot by 100-foot landing zone free of overhead obstruction. You can provide them with physical address or coordinates. When the helicopter lands, never approach unless directed to do so. They will come to your location to assess the patient and receive a report. There are multiple ways to find different EMS resources. It's important to be familiar with the area you are working in. Most locations have a central dispatch or common radio channel that can dispatch fire and EMS resources. Some states have a statewide fire or medical channel for major events. Most air medical evacuation services have a dispatch center that dispatches multiple helicopters to medical emergencies. Planning is key, and you should know these numbers and contact information before your operation. But if you're in an area that you're unfamiliar with and you have a medical emergency, call 911. Questions to consider: are we going to self-evacuate, self-transport all the way to the hospital? Or if we have EMS and fire resources available in the area, are we going to transfer care at a predetermined location? These are all great questions and things that need to be identified during the operational planning and brief. What vehicle is best for evacuation? If larger vehicles are available, they should be designated as the medical evacuation vehicle. The medical evacuation vehicle should be free of excess gear in the back seat and should be loaded with medical equipment. The evacuation vehicle should not be parked in a spot that allows it to be blocked by other team members or responding units. If the target location is a dead-end road, the vehicle should be at the rear of the stack. If the target location is on a road that travels through, it might be best to have the evacuation vehicle in front of the stack and have them pull past the target location for staging. Either way, this should be communicated to the team during the briefing and before initiating enforcement action. The location of the keys, as well as the driver and medic, should be identified during the operational briefing. If a second person is available, they should ride in the vehicle to help the driver or help the medic. If another person isn't available to assist, the driver will be expected to contact the ER. If resources allow, a lead vehicle should be used to assist with the patient's transport to the local ER. Planning is the key to succeeding. It's important to have a team medic identified to provide patient care. If a U.S. Marshals operational medical support medic is not available, is there anyone else on the team who has current or prior medical experience? Who is the backup medic if the medic is injured? Who's the backup driver if the driver is injured? Is everyone on the team aware of the hospital's location? Is the hospital's location plugged into the GPS of the transport vehicle? We should always plan for the worst case scenario. What is the plan if there are 2 officers injured? How are we going to handle that situation? Will we need 2 evacuation platforms? Remember to plan for multiple scenarios, multiple injuries. This is a general outline on emergency procedures with an officer down plan. Please take a moment to review the immediate action principles shown. Additional training on specific medical interventions will be provided by the USMS during your participation in the Deputy Trauma course. EPO number 2, identify common patient extrications. When moving a casualty under emergent conditions, care and consideration should be given regarding the condition of the casualty, medical interventions applied, size and weight of the casualty, and if a litter system is going to be used, how far do we need to move the casualty? If a casualty is conscious and able to move under their own power, they should be directed to do so and pointed towards the nearest egress point. If they are unconscious or unable to move on their own, a rescue plan should be initiated. If medical interventions are applied, the rescuers should take due care to ensure the intervention is not disrupted during transport. If there is a pause during transport that is prolonged, rescuers should look at the intervention applied to make sure it's still effective. The size and weight of a casualty is of utmost importance. A litter may be necessary and or needed to move a heavier casualty from the point of impact to the transport vehicle. These are examples of common extrication devices and litters that are currently being used by the U.S. Marshal Service. In addition, you should be aware that hasty extrication devices may also be available at your target location. These could include bed sheets, chairs, curtains, carpets, or rugs. The 5-loop sling is utilized as a tool to quickly move a patient over a very short distance. It provides no protection to the patient and no barrier between the patient's body and the ground. This adjunct should only be used in exigent circumstances. The 5-loop handle strap should be placed on the patient's chest. The end loops should be placed over the patient's legs and positioned as high on the leg as possible. The arms and shoulder should be secured with the next loop, allowing for a tight cinch, making it easier for the rescuer to lift the patient's back off the ground. When using the two rescuer technique, make sure to lift the patient's torso and head off the ground before initiating the drag. The soft litter, phantom litter, is small, lightweight, and compact. It can be stored in the pouch provided or can be removed from the pouch and tucked inside the front or rear panel of your body armor. It is good for short distance carries or drags, but cannot be used for vertical rescue. The patient should be rolled onto their side to allow the second rescuer to place the litter underneath. This is a good opportunity for the rescuer to check the patient's back for additional injuries. The patient's arm should be secured with a strap if they are unconscious. The patient can also be carried by the rescuers using the hand straps located around the litter. The rigid litter is used to move a patient over uneven terrain, and some models can be utilized in hoist or air evacuations. They provide increased protection to the patient while being dragged or carried. Some can also be used with a backboard if appropriate. This is a demonstration of a SCED being deployed. The litter will need to be unrolled and rolled back on itself to keep it from curling up. The patient's body armor and weapon belt should be removed. The bottom of the sked should be placed at the head of the patient, and the patient should then be pulled onto the litter. The first strap should be located at the patient's chest. Adjust your patient if necessary. Each buckle and strap should be secured from chest to feet, tightening up as you go along. The patient's arms should be secured inside the litter if they are unconscious. The patient's feet should be secured between the straps. The drag strap at the head should be adjusted to roll the top up to protect the patient's head. The sked can be drug or carried depending on terrain and number of rescuers. The all-platform evacuation litter weighs approximately 19 pounds, is 91 inches long. It has folding handles to accommodate helicopter and vehicle transport and can be assembled for patient carry in 20 seconds. This is a demonstration of the APE litter deployment. The litter should be opened by pulling both ends away from each other. The litter should be placed upside down and the cross members should be rotated upward and locked into place by applying downward pressure with your hands or foot. Make sure the cross members are locked before placing the casualty on it. Consider removing body armor and weapon before placing a casualty on the litter. Make sure to position the casualty on the litter with their head supported. Adjust the casualty if necessary. Use the attached webbing and buckle to secure the patient on the litter. And secure the patient's arms on the litter if they are unconscious. The hasty drag should only be used under exigent circumstances and for short distances. The patient's back and shoulders should be lifted off the ground to reduce friction. The rescuer should maintain an upright posture and drive using their legs. The two-person carry of a conscious patient allows for even distribution of the patient's weight. The patient holds themselves upright with their arms placed around the rescuer's head or shoulders. Rescuers get into a deep squat and grab the opposing side of the belt and scoop the legs. If the patient goes unconscious, the rescuers drop the legs, hold onto the patient's arms, and drag him to their destination. When using the two-person carry of an unconscious patient, consider distance and weight of the casualty. Several different grips are available depending on the size of the patient. Single arm, one arm, wrist and forearm, cross arms for larger patients. The same grips can be used for one rescue or drag. The rescuer at the head must initiate the lift first. Otherwise, the weight will be shifted, causing the rescuer at the head to lose balance. Rescuers at the legs should make every effort to lift the legs onto their shoulders. This helps reduce the weight on the rescuer at the head. For short distances, the patient's legs can be crossed, injured leg on top, and the rescuer can grab the bottom ankle or pant leg during the lift. For vehicle loading techniques, whether it be the front seat or the back seat load, the technique can be done and is demonstrated using two rescuers. The rescuer at the head will take up a position at the front door. The rescuer at the legs will take control of the patient's body weight, leaning them against the vehicle if necessary. The free rescuer can now position the front passenger seat, laying it back and sliding it to the rear. He can then climb into the back seat and assist with sliding the patient up and into the front seat. The front seat allows for the treating officer to establish a stable platform while working from the back seat of the vehicle. The patient can be moved and manipulated in a manner to expose the entire body. Any injuries below the groin should be treated with a tourniquet. Injuries to the groin should immediately be addressed with direct pressure from the rescuer's knee until additional medical interventions can be applied. Allow the patient to sit forward in the seat if they have significant trauma to their head, face, or neck. This will allow the patient to maintain their own airway. The back seat is a good secondary location. The patient's feet should be loaded into the vehicle first. The rescuer should climb into the back seat and pull the rest of the patient's lower body into the vehicle. The patient's vest should then be held to keep the patient upright while the door is closed. If the patient needs to be placed flat on their back, the rescuer only needs to grab at the patient's knees and pull them further into the seat. This is a demonstration of the hasty loading into a vehicle and should only be used under exigent circumstances and with prior practice. EPO number 3, identify post-incident considerations. Considerations for scene security should include officers creating a perimeter facing away from the target location if the fugitive is in custody, or establishing a perimeter and preserving a crime scene if the fugitive or officer is injured. Should a suspect barricade themselves inside a target location, officers should also maintain situational awareness of the local area and egress routes for injured officers. Officers should be aware of routes free of traffic and congestion or construction. Often officers will encounter situations that will increase adrenaline levels and therefore injuries may be overlooked. When time permits, the USMS deputy in charge or designated team leader should conduct a roll call and an accounting for all team members and their locations. Team members should be instructed to conduct a self-check for injuries. Once a self-check is complete, team members should partner up and conduct a buddy check for injuries and report back to the designated team leader. Typically, the team leader or senior officer on the scene will notify senior leadership, their chain of command, and the U.S. Marshal Service Communication Center will receive a notification. U.S. Marshal Service leadership will contact each agency leadership involved and notify them of the incident and current situation. Each officer should be allowed to contact their family and advise them of their status. In some situations, task force officers may be called upon to notify the family and provide transportation if needed. Task force officers may need areas to meet following an incident. Government buildings, including fire departments and police stations, are suitable locations to rally after an incident. Fire departments are strategically located throughout communities and routinely welcome officers to decompress as a group. Police stations and substations also have conference rooms or areas that can accommodate the officers. Officers involved in a discharge of their firearms should be removed from the scene and placed in a vehicle or moved to an off-site location with a team member. They should never be left unattended. Purpose is to prevent responding media from capturing unnecessary footage. It is not recommended to take an officer to the emergency room with no injuries to report for the sole purpose of getting checked out and or get them removed from the scene. If there are no injuries found or no complaint, workers' compensation claims may be denied. The officer may then incur unexpected emergency room bills, adding a financial burden to that officer's situation. We have covered the EPOs outlined within this course. We have identified the principles of medical operational planning and its importance. We've identified and shown videos on common patient extrications, and we've discussed post-incident considerations. Thank you for your participation in the United States Marshal Service Medical Pre-Planning and Support course. Should you have any questions, please reach out to your assigned U.S. Marshal Service team leader.